In the digital economy, complexities seem to come in layers and with tentacles. How does a company protect themselves in markets around the world from the risk posed by fraud and unethical conduct? How do they detect issues early and correct unethical or illegal behavior? Greetings, everyone, and welcome from the Technology Association of Georgia. It's Tuesday, February 17, 2015, and this is Tech Talk. I'm your host, Frank Baia. On today's edition of Tech Talk, it's called GRC, Governance, Risk, and Compliance, the challenge for organizations to mitigate risk, achieve compliance, and ultimately create better, more ethical workplaces. Is there an enterprise-level technology solution that would natively integrate ethics and compliance into a single software suite, one that offers a best-in-class solution for global organizations in every industry? Up to the Tech Talk, an industry leader that is providing help in the form of integrated technology solutions to nearly half of the Fortune 500. That's right, more than 26 million employees worldwide rely on the technology and expert-level services of the network. On this thought leadership exploration, we speak with the Vice President of Product Management and Corporate Development for the network, Jimmy Lin. Jimmy leads corporate and product strategies for the company and has over 14 years' experience in and around software and technology. From implementing software to analyzing new markets and leading product strategies for organizations like Oversight Systems, Manhattan Associates, UPS Supply Chain Solutions, and IP to Biz. Corporate ethics and compliance, a fast-growing area of concern for organizations of all sizes and all industries. What are some of the challenges in the marketplace today that are driving more demanding needs for more effective solutions? It's all about governance, risk, and compliance, GRC, as we speak with the Network Vice President of Product Management and Corporate Development and a GRC-certified professional, Jimmy Lin. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Jimmy, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thanks, Frank. Great to be here.
Well, one of the topics I think is probably on the mind of every CEO, every major company. In fact, I would guess every company, regardless of the industry, and that's to be proactively managing their risk and compliance issues, and the greater challenge to build a culture of integrity. You guys have been around over 3 decades, so you've certainly seen a lot happen. Let's start by talking a little bit about a brief history of the company, and then kind of progressively tell us what you do.
Sure. Like you mentioned, we are a 32-plus-year-old based company here in Atlanta. We've been in this industry for the entire time and really helped found part of it, and have been really proud to have stayed in Atlanta this entire time as well. We're really focused on being experts in the ethics and compliance realm. And what does that really mean? Well, what that means is, we're here to help organizations, big and small. We have clients that are, sort of Fortune 500 or privately held companies, really help them develop and improve their culture of integrity and demonstrate their regulatory compliance. And I think, as you mentioned, it is a changing time these days in terms of how important this aspect is for a lot of organizations, and can be a fairly risky endeavor for organizations not to take good care of their compliance programs and their sort of ethical cultures, as you might put it.
Well, I'm kind of fascinated, and I think a lot of our listeners would be as well. I mean, what would be something that would be some of the basic procedures that you would do in creating an ethical culture within an organization?
Well, I think some of the key aspects are around not only setting the right expectations with your employees, but also constantly communicating and reminding your employees of what those expectations are. I think, sort of when you start from the foundation, it's about taking this subject seriously to begin with. Messages from the CEO, from the top, are extremely important to sort of establishing the fact that the company really does care about this subject, that there is a lot to be understood in this area, and that the company wants to take it seriously. And I think once, sort of those messages get established, I think it's some of the formal business processes and procedures around the organization, such as, establishing policies and making sure that employees are understanding what those policies mean. You follow up those policies with some training and some awareness materials, because usually, ethics and compliance type issues aren't typically sort of core to our daily job as we would all think about it. So, if you work in marketing or if you work somewhere in operations, your mind is probably on the task at hand, and that usually may not involve sort of ethics and compliance, at least not initially. But I think so many jobs actually do entail ethics and compliance. We all represent a component of that culture and of that process, and we all need to contribute to helping to support that particular process within the organization.
I think that probably, again, for many of our listeners and myself too as well, when we talk about ethics and we deal with integrity, when you deal with engaging employees, you kind of assume that through the hiring process you vetted that out, and that you don't need to have a discipline or a process in place that constantly reinforces it. I guess where I'm headed is that I'm imagining that there's got to be some challenges in the market, and they're driving the need for something like what you do. Certainly the compliance issue, but from a corporate ethics standpoint, go a little into that for us.
Sure, yeah, and I think, we are all, probably pretty familiar these days with the fact that, we all go through some kind of extensive, background check and reference checking, when we get hired for a new job and start working for a new organization. But I think, everyone can sort of put on a good face, for that short period of time. There's always, sort of the who you are at that moment. And then things change. Just like everything in this world, it's a constant daily change. So something may happen in a person's life that, makes them desperate for additional resources. Other things might happen that are out of their control that, sort of create challenges for their personal life that then affects them at work. And I think
you create an environment that would alert to that?
Well, and what you do is you want to create an environment of having all of your employees be on the alert for the few people that might be sort of heading in the wrong direction. You can pretty much say that, every organization at some point in time has, a handful of bad apples within, a very large corporation. There are folks that, might not be doing anything harmful today, but they could do it tomorrow.
Sure, and so that I can see your point.
Yeah, so if you look at, even an organization of, 5,000 employees, 10,000 employees, 100,000 employees, how do you keep an eye on everybody? You can't really sort of, watch what everybody is doing and exactly sort of what risk each individual person might pose. And so if you have, a well-trained employee base, then really to me, you have, all of your employees' eyes and ears out there looking for you, looking on your behalf. And, what you want to do is sort of build up that consensus of everybody wants to do the right thing. And so the few bad apples that stand out, they will be there to call them out.
So, I mean, it's a form of loyalty in terms of, but also creating an environment that supports the proper action and knows there's no consequence, negative consequence, but in fact a positive one just for the greater culture of the organization.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of benefit to sort of creating that cohesiveness, amongst your employee base. I mean, you want to retain, your best performing employees. You want to retain the employees that are truly engaged in their job. And so, if you have employees who are high caliber, but they think that, everybody around them is cheating, they're probably not going to be, sticking around your organization.
Well, and I'm sure the organization also gets a reputation for it, and one of the things, as you mentioned, is recruitment and retention. And I think, especially a lot of times on Tech Talk, how many times, time and time again, the CEO or CTO will talk about the culture of the environment and how it's such a positive place and how they want to make sure that people feel good and feel right about working there. I mean, there's got to be a positive attitude. So I would think in today's reality, it's even more important than it's ever been.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of different factors for that. One, definitely the reputation, of the organization from a recruitment standpoint is very important. And we see a lot of studies these days, showing how the new generation, the millennials, in terms of where they choose to work, that's actually one of their big factors. Right. That they want to work for an organization that they know is ethical. But I think the other thing is that, with sort of the proliferation of social media and all the things that are going on, reputational risk really has, bubbled to the top of a lot of the top concerns for boards and C-level executives for companies of all sizes. Your company's reputation in terms of, how your suppliers might represent you in your supply chain, or how you look out there, with the consumers, with your products.
And the network monitors all that.
Well, so what we do is we help focus on building that ethical culture base. We help make sure that you have a strong enough compliance program in place to help
catch it before it happens.
Well, to catch it before it happens, as well as knowing that at some point something will probably happen. It's not a complete prevention strategy, but when something does happen, when something does potentially impact your reputation, that you've already built up a strong enough reputation of being an ethical company that you don't take as big of a hit, right? So your brand actually stands a little bit stronger and can withstand the things that are coming at you, rather than having a weak foundation to start with and then getting knocked over.
Well, I'm thinking, in this era of, it used to be Show Me the Money, now it's Shark Tank, and everybody seems so, I wouldn't say unethical, but certainly there's not too much empathy in terms of if you don't know any better kind of thing. And I guess where I'm going is that some of the people that are listening to you today are saying, well, that's all great, Jimmy, I get it, and we certainly want to run a good place and be ethical. But how does that help me on the bottom line? And I guess where I'm going is, I'm guessing it's going to impact reducing fraud and, as you point out, just simply create a much better workplace. It's in the long run going to impact the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think it's really sort of additive as well as preventative, in the sense that you want to make sure that you create a strong enough workplace to attract the talent and sort of to build up your reputation. But at the same time, what you want to do is make sure that you're showing that you're doing the best that you can, that helps you reduce potential fines that might come down from you when incidents do happen. That might actually completely eliminate any investigations or fines and things like that, and that's real hard dollars. And as you mentioned, the fraud, on average, globally, most companies lose about 4.5% to 5% of their revenue to fraud. And those are pretty big dollar values when you're talking about $1 billion worth of market cap. So any movement in that percentage, in terms of reducing that percentage, can help you tremendously on your bottom line.
So I'm interested. It's as simple as making contact with the network, and a representative comes out and explains everything that you've talked about. But maybe there's some form of induction process that you start out with. I mean, how do I begin if I'm interested in following up on the conversation?
Yeah, so I think one of the things is that we always try to look for sort of where are sort of the quick hits, where's the problem area that you currently face. Because, sort of this compliance program initiative is so big and wide, usually most organizations are having challenges in a specific area. Mm-hmm. They might be having challenges with understanding whether or not they're getting, sort of wind of all of the incidents that are happening in the organization. Or they might be having issues with making sure that their code of conduct is actually, up to date, and that it hasn't, sort of fallen on the wayside for 10 years. So depending on the issue, we'll go in and really look, from a consultative manner, what's sort of the problem area, where should you start off, and then what should you tackle next? Because this is one of those sort of broad-based problems that you can't just solve in one fell swoop, that you really do have to go in and strategically hit what you can do today and continue to expand on that, because most organizations out there, because of the indirect ROI with a lot of compliance programs, don't have an open checkbook to spend on compliance initiatives.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things I'd be remiss in not asking, because you guys have been around for so many years, I'm not sure you've been there for the full 36, but all of the big headlines all talk about incubators and startups and the fast-growing companies that come out of the chute seemingly every day. But here's a case where you guys have been around for some time. I got to ask, what's been the best part of being a fast-growing tech company in Atlanta for so long?
Well, I think, a lot of it is having a very supportive community. I mean, we've had so many, fast-growing tech companies in Atlanta, and I think, while we've been around for a while, some days I like to refer to us as a 32-year-old startup. In some ways, we've sort of reborn the company in the last 5 to 10 years, but in a lot of ways, we have the stability of a long-term company. And so I think one of the things is that we actually have a concentration of other sort of risk and compliance providers here in Georgia as well. And so it's great to sort of share that community with them locally, but also just the talent. We know that Atlanta has a great talent pool for tech companies, whether you're looking for software developers or you're looking for great product marketing talent. So I can't see us moving from Atlanta anytime soon. I just love the fact that we have such a great base of resources to tap into here.
Well, here. I think there's a lot of us agree with that. Got to ask, where do you go from here, especially with the sense of perspective and the reality of being the fastest growing startup, the oldest, fastest growing startup in Atlanta, but now what's next?
Well, I think we continue down that path. I mean, there's so many more burgeoning and more complex regulatory problems to solve. Compliance issues have become sort of front and center and really have gotten hot the last couple of years, and we can't really see a slowdown to that. So I think, we're going to keep innovating in our space as we've done the last 5 years. And try to continue to change the landscape there, but definitely here to meet our customers' needs and keep that growth happening.
Well, when people look for a competitive advantage or a unique selling proposition, wouldn't it be great if the bottom line is integrity and not necessarily just the how fast the revenues are growing? Well, Jimmy, we get so many perspectives on so many aspects of the technology, and we call it layers and tentacles, and certainly today, when it comes to the whole compliance area and corporate ethics, you really covered the subject well, and we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
Well, thank you for having me. It was great to be on.